Welcome to Real Estate Real Talk with myself, Julia M. Spencer. Thank you for joining me. And on my show, we talk about anything and everything related to real estate investing. Anything for the owner, tenant, maybe landlords, or any professionals that are out there. I'm a local real estate investor here in Savannah, Georgia, and so glad to be here again live today, broadcasting from downtown Savannah near Troop Square. And have in the studio with me my son here today. He's probably not going to talk, but we had a really lively discussion about scam calls, or I might share a little bit of that with you here in the next few minutes. But just to back up a little bit, what we do here on the show, we talk really about anything and everything related to real estate. In this case, because I am a local real estate investor, I have just a ton of properties here in town, as well as other cities in and around Georgia. And I get a lot of not just spam calls to my phone, but also an extremely high amount of mailers, like the little postcards where they're trying to buy my home, even though it's not for sale, the unsolicited salespeople. Now, if you could remember, it's been a while now, but I've actually called some of those people on those flyers before, and I call them owner-operators. So basically, they're individual investors that bought some sort of program from some company, and I actually got some just now today sent to my address, and they basically bought like sort of a system of how to purchase properties for the cheap. They remodel them. They have a system for that as well. They have like a network of people they can go to for contracting services. And then, of course, the system also includes basically information about how to offset this property, how to sell it for a profit. And it's the goal to make this a full-time job, to hire people, and to have kind of like a pipeline going for buying and selling. I'm not sure if that couple that was here on the show is still doing this. The last I've heard, they've actually advertising a different kind of business on social media. So I'm not sure if they're still into that. Also, when they were here, they were telling me that they actually pretty much were doing a full-time job at this kind of work. So it wasn't like sit back and relax and collect rent. It was actually a full-time job. And of course, if you're the owner, you really are never off. So I'm not sure how profitable it was for them or is, or even what the profit margins are at all for this business, but I'm suspecting that these mailers that I get and all these spam calls that I get to buy my homes are very much similar to the fact that there's a lot of owner-operators out there that are just trying to fill their pipeline. And so I get the same mailers to the same homes over and over and over again for years and years and years. It's not just like, let's touch every house in the neighborhood. Let's touch every house in the neighborhood 100 times, because in the time of a 10-year time frame, somebody's going to want to sell something at some point. Unfortunately, being an investor here in this city for the last 14 years, or in this county as well, Chatham County, it is sadly the thing that I have to report that it's pretty slim pickings now for cheap. So you should have gotten into this business here probably like 10 or 15 years ago. That was a little bit more the time to make some really good profits. But what is being sold now at the tax sales, at the city auctions, even at the bank foreclosures, there's not really a whole lot that you can get for very cheap anymore. And of course, you also have to have a lot of cash in your pockets. So I'm trying to find my songs here. Let's just play a little bit of music here, and I'll be right back after this, and we're going to talk about these spam calls and what you can do about it to get rid of them, or at least minimize them as much as possible, if that's even possible. I'll be right back. Stay on, don't go anywhere. And I'm back here with Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. Thank you for tuning in. On my show, we talk about anything and everything related to real estate investing, and we've just had a lively discussion here about spam and robocalls, and I don't know about you, but I'm so sick and tired of them. Obviously, probably a lot of people are. I don't know if it's easier to just go ahead and accept that as a fact of life or actually do something about it. Right before this show today, I'm actually broadcasting live today, it's December the 13th, 2023. It is a little bit after noon here, 12:18, I believe, 17. And right before, I keep getting the same spam caller, and I actually do answer it because I don't like having my calls being unanswered, simply because I have a lot of important calls that I actually have to accept regarding the management of my properties as well as friends. And I do have a second line for those kinds of calls, but then you would be managing basically 2 sets of phones, and I really don't like that. So I prefer to have everything be routed to my main line, and I try to answer it at least during business hours. So it is very aggravating if spam and robocalls call you. I also get a lot of these solicitors that purposefully are organizations that you would normally trust, such as firefighter organizations or police organizations, and a lot of times it's not really actually a person on the other line. It's just a recording that's being played once you pick up the phone and say hello. And they come from local numbers, So on top of that, not all calls on your phone are being identified as scams. So some of those calls come through, and it's really aggravating because it's really frustrating to try to weave through to the calls that you actually need to get some business done, and being held up by these robocalls. So anyways, let's back up. What happened earlier, I keep getting phone calls from this same company. I'm going to just call them by the name because I don't know if you guys have heard of this company before. I certainly don't want to make them sound bad, but in my defense, I don't even think that they're located here in the United States. So I believe they say Quality Excursions or something like that. And I've been getting calls from them for the last couple of weeks. And I believe it's usually from people that obviously are sitting in a call center, because you can hear other people calling in the background. The person that picks up has very limited English capabilities usually, and they do always give you an English-sounding name. Like today it was Sarah, Rose, I believe. I had another person no, I didn't have a gentleman today. It was just ladies that were answering the phone. So Sarah and Rose were the 2 that called me today. I will immediately ask him, hey, I'm on a do not call list, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here on the show. But I also asked them to please remove my number off their call list. And in this particular case, I was actually put on hold, and I stayed online, actually. I went ahead and just put the phone on mute and recorded it. And I was on hold for a good 25 minutes when I put that call on hold and called that number back again and asked the next person to basically remove my number off their list. And I kept doing that until I had about 5 calls in a row on the same recorded line. I would basically just add the call, merge the calls, add the call, merge the calls, because the previous ones were all on hold. I was put on hold. So that in the end, the whole phone call was about 45 minutes, and then they just dropped the whole entire conversation. Or maybe my phone dropped it, I don't know, but the phone call was ended at 45 minutes. Now, I want to say, backing up a little bit, that I actually did speak to a person regarding this about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And I did get dispatched through to a manager. Now, the manager spoke perfect English, absolutely flawless, and American English, if I may add to that, not some other accent like Australia or British English. It was American English. I commented on that, and he actually said, yeah, I've been speaking it all my life. I was like, okay. Well, I didn't want to offend anybody by making that statement, but I did ask him to remove my number off his list, and I mentioned to him that I'm on a do not call registry, the National Do Not Call Registry here in the United States. And he said, well, he doesn't have visibility of that, but he will remove my number off his list. Needless to say, that didn't happen because of the phone call of today. So basically asking them to remove your number off their list most of the time, or a lot of times, doesn't work. So I went a little bit and looked at what can be done about this. Is this just a fact of life? I kind of want to hear your opinion about it as well. So if you have any input on this, please do not hesitate to send me an email or contact me through YouTube. Any of my videos out there, any of these radio shows, you can actually leave comments at the bottom of them. But the question is, first off, let's talk about this do not call list. Does it actually work? And why are you still getting phone calls if your number is on that list? So from what I understand is that this list is a federal do not call list, or a federal national do not call registry. It's actually managed by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and it's the nation's consumer protection agency. So if you add your number to that list, it is very likely that your robocall and spam calls are going to decrease a little bit. However, they're not going to go completely away. On top of that, as we know, whenever you put anything online, it takes a long time for this trickle effect for the information that you updated your number on there to trickle down to all the other systems for all the telemarketers. So they might look at old information, basically where your number was still a number that could be called. On top of that, they resell this number to other spammers and scammers and telemarketing companies. And so there's really no possibility for you to ever have your number completely removed off of people's robocalls and spam calls. There's no way to permanently do it. However, they will basically call you repeatedly. The best thing, of course, is to report it. So in addition to putting your number on this do not call registry, you should also report it if somebody still calls you from that same number. Now, that's going to take an effort on your side, and there's no payout on this. Theoretically, you can sue them, and there are fines that can be associated with not following this law. But then again, we're assuming that these companies are located within the United States, which they can be anywhere in the world and most likely are not here in the United States. So it's going to be very difficult to prosecute a company like this. What can you do? Can you actually sue them? Well, in theory, yes, you can. The Telephone Consumer Protection Act, TCPA, is a federal law that gives consumers who receive robocalls the right to sue and possibly be compensated up to $1,500 per call. How successful has this been in the past? I don't really know. But unless you get so many calls that your phone just basically rings nonstop, I don't see it very worthwhile for this little amount of reward to be possible to compensate you for your lawyer's cost in this case. Let's ask a couple more questions here. Another question that I've read is online, is it better to let spam calls go to voicemail? So don't answer calls from unknown numbers. That's a really good idea. However, if this is your business phone and it's your job to answer your phone, and you might get guests or tenants or contractors, people that work with you or for you, call you, you cannot just not answer unknown numbers. Sometimes you have to answer unknown numbers. So, however, if you don't use your phone for business purposes, if this is a private phone, just let the call go to voicemail. If the caller claims to be from a legitimate company or organizations, hang up and call them back using a valid number found on their website or on your latest bill if you do business with them. So that's not going to stop the call, but at least you'll know that you're going to be talking to the actual person that is calling you. And they will likely give you a callback number anyways if they want to talk to you or leave you a voice message. So what else can we discuss regarding this? What happens if you accidentally answer a spam call, which I do actually quite frequently? If you answer, you start getting even more spam calls. So being tricked into giving up personal information. As soon as you answer, scammers will try to get you to share personal information that they can use to steal your identity. Even just saying yes to a scam call can be used to hack into your online accounts. So I'm always worried about whenever I have a conversation with anybody on the phone that it's being recorded. And these days with the technology, you can actually string the words together to make you say in your own voice something that you actually didn't say. So collecting these words and then putting them together later is actually a pretty scary thought here. AI, I'm sure, can do that these days and make you sound like you saying stuff that you never said. It's really important not to really say anything, especially not yes or any other information on the line. We are actually also at the bottom of the hour right here, so I got to play also some announcements. So let's do that. I'll look through a couple more of these questions and answers and hopefully get you to thinking about spam and robocalls. I was telling my son earlier here that I missed the time when the phone was ringing and you would be excited to answer the phone because it would usually be a friend calling or maybe a love interest or somebody with good news, or maybe a family member. And it was always a good event when somebody called and you loved being on the phone and have long conversations on the phone. That was kind of like a way to stay in touch with people. And at some point, when these telemarketing and robocalls came along, people started to become apprehensive about answering the phone, at least I did, so that it's not like that anymore. And I would love to go back to that old time. In any case, let's talk a little bit about some more questions and answers about robocalls and spam calls. And we're going to do that right after this song here. So please stay on. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back after this.
The Savannah Philharmonic is presenting Holiday Stories of Savannah on December 16th at the Lucas Theater for the Arts in Savannah. This performance, conducted by Katera Harada, features local musicians such as Ricardo Ochoa, Lakin Love, Eric Culberson, Matt Eckstein, Teddy Adams, and the Eric Jones Trio for a festive holiday musical event. Tickets are still available for the matinee performance at 3 p.m. More information and tickets are available at savannahphilharmonic.org.
You're listening to WRUU, your local radio station, for people just like you, hosted by people from your community. The voices you hear are your neighbors, coworkers, and others from the Savannah and Lowcountry area. In other words, WRUU is your community radio station. Please help us by donating whatever you can to help your neighbors and friends stay on the air. Go to WRUU.org and support your local radio station. Any amount is welcomed. Thank you for your support of WRUU.
And my name is Julia M. Spencer. I'm back here with Real Estate Real Talk. Thank you for staying on. And I was actually reading in our break here a little bit about this AI technology that can basically string together words in your voice. You know, us people here on the radio who basically have recordings out there in the World Wide Web, and me personally, I have some 800 videos on YouTube. So my voice has pretty much said anything that there is to say in the English language and other languages that can be strung together and make me say just about anything on AI. So I'm pretty much just the lost cause here as far as robocalls and spam calls. If they can, of course, find these audio files and taken from these videos and from the other content that I've posted online, and they can clone that my voice basically using AI. They don't even need to string together and just use my voice inflection to make me say whatever they want me to say, which is really scary. So we're pretty much getting into an era that it's another tangent I really just didn't want to go off on this show. I did actually hear just a couple days here on the German radio that the European Commission actually has cited European Union. I don't know exactly the commission or the subcommittee basically of the European Union that was dealing with that, but that AI has to now follow a certain set of standards and rules, and that companies that use AI to develop their software have to actually disclose that they're using AI and in which way, so people are informed. That doesn't mean there's any restrictions on it. It's just saying that people have to be informed by it. Now, whether that's going to be followed through by the states and countries of the European Union, I'm not sure. As far as the rest of the world, you know, there's going to be other countries and states that will do whatever they want to. We're not going to get into politics here. I'm pretty sure China's doing some stuff that we probably wouldn't agree with here with our privacy concerns in this country. But let's talk a little bit more about spam calls and abandoned calls. Of course, stealing your voice is a really big concern, so you better be careful what you say online. Your information, can they actually just steal it? Well, if you just answer the call. Phone calls are really unlikely to be the direct source of the phone hacks, but text messages can contain malware, and both calls and texts can be used to launch phishing attacks or other scams or trick you into giving up sensitive information, transferring money, or downloading viruses or spyware. Actually, really recently, and I'm pretty, I guess, street savvy for the most part, you know, for my age. I guess my kids probably wouldn't think so, but for the most part, I've seen a few things, so I'm very good about not giving out information on the phone or via text. But the other day, I actually did get a message that really almost got me, but just almost, you know. It was a message that really seemed to come from PayPal. I believe it was PayPal, and basically said my account will be closed unless I provide additional information because it has been hacked. And this message came once to my email, and at first I ignored it. And then the same message kept coming and coming with more and more urgency. So at this point, I went and clicked the link, shame on me, and they wanted, of course, all this other information. And I'm like, halfway through entering some of this, actually, I did. I was like, okay, this is information they should have already. Why does PayPal ask me for this additional information? And this is when I realized, okay, let me check the actual email address. Where is the domain name? Where did it come from? And obviously it was a scam. I actually typed it into the Google and found out that other people were spammed the same way and actually went all the way with it. So good thing I stopped that halfway through. I would really recommend that if you guys are getting anything like that, to really double check it. Take your time. I know we get overloaded with information from all kinds of sources, but it's really useful not to take these things too lightly and just breeze through your emails, but actually read them. Read where the message comes from and, try to determine the source of the person that's soliciting this information from you. Any kind of information that's being asked from you, always double check it and think about whether or not that person has the need to know and if they shouldn't already have this information. That goes for spam calls, robocalls, but also email messages that you get. I guess this one question is, why does the do not call list not work anymore? So it actually does work, but if you still have trouble, your number may have been registered more than once, or the telemarketers or scammers that are contacting you may be violating the terms. Again, you can report them and check on your phone number registration. This do not call list has been around for a really, really long time. I want to say even almost 20 years or so. And I do remember in the past, whenever I registered my numbers, the phone calls did go down significantly. However, this is not something that lasts forever. You kind of have to go back in and renew your number every couple of years or so. And I believe these days they actually will tell you how long your number will be on that list. And of course, that's not going to decline everybody. And you're going to get phone calls like crazy, especially at this time of the year for health insurance and other things. So I'm not really sure what I can suggest to you. I think it's a multi-pronged approach. It might be okay to answer and just ask them to remove your number off their specific list. I did that actually yesterday. I get calls, of course, from a lot of people that want to buy my homes, and these are individual investors. So I do call them back. I ask them to remove my number, and I do record that call and the person that spoke to me so that I have at least a record that I've asked. And every mailer that I get now, I actually do write down when I called them, who I spoke to, what I've asked them, and the fact that they did confirm taking me off the list or didn't. Like in this case today, where this company actually just put me on hold forever and then dropped the call. So did they remove my number off their list? Probably not. And that pretty much brings me to my next breaking point here, I guess. I'm going to play some more music, be right back after this, and that's going to pretty much bring us to the end of the show. At least a couple of tips of what you can do if you get too many spam calls. Be right back. Please stay on. Don't go anywhere. And that was my break song here with Julia M. Spencer, Let's Stay Together. And you're just listening to Real Estate Real Talk with myself, and we're talking about spam calls, robocalls, any kind of spam that you get in the email or anything like that. How do you stop it? What's the background? Is there anything that you can do whatsoever? I did have a question here for somebody that asked me, how do you get on this do not call list? And it's really easy. You basically go to donotcall.gov, or you can call 1-888-382-1222. Again, that's 1-888-382-1222. That's the number. And you can also go to the website, of course, donotcall.gov. You can call that from your phone. You want to register, it's free. If you register your number at Do Not Call, you'll get actually an email with a link you have to click on within 72 hours to complete your registration. So that's how you get on that list. And of course, if you have more than one number, you got to make that call from several other numbers as well. That might be something good to do. However, after you register, other types of organizations may still call you, and that could be charities, political groups, debt collectors, and surveys. They actually are not part of the marketing group that uses the do not call list, so they can still call you. And telemarketing is illegal in some states, of course, telemarketing fraud, that is. And there's some laws that are associated with this as well. Again, whether it can be prosecuted and is of any use to you, you always have to weigh whether it's useful, the effort, what you're going to gain from it. And again, the Do Not Call registry is managed by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and that's nation's consumer protection agency. Now, there was another question here that I got, and it has to do with, why do unknown numbers keep calling me and hanging up? I don't know if you've gotten any of those calls before where you pick up the phone, nobody says anything, they hang up immediately. So it turns out that these calls are generated from so-called call centers, the workplaces where many companies launch their customers' acquisition campaigns to their phone lists. So it turns out that different companies have automatic dialing programs that send these calls to the lists they have available. And when somebody picks up the phone and says something, that makes your number a good number, and that will be then verified in their system. And these are numbers that can be then sold to other telemarketers. Unfortunately, if you do answer, you start getting even more spam calls because obviously your number is considered a good number in that case. That's about it. Other than that, I have nothing else. I'd say just be very careful. Keep very good records. As a good friend of mine says, the more paper, the cleaner the booty. And so whenever somebody calls you or you get spam calls repeatedly from the same company, I would say keep a log of it. Get a recording system or an app installed on your phone. Record these calls if you can. Do add your number to the do not call list. Ask the spammers, if you're comfortable with it, to actually say anything on the phone, to even have your number removed off of their list. This is more specifically geared to specific solicitors in your area. Of course, I know you can't do that if you get a recorded message. There's not an actual person on the other side. So do what you can. It takes some effort. I can tell you from experience, when I first launched this defense, basically, of my phone line a couple of years ago, it was quite successful. It eliminated about 80% of the spam calls I got, but it took a lot of effort. And at that time, people were actually answering the phone. It wasn't as sophisticated and as automated as it is today. And my philosophy was always to speak to the person, get their name, get their company's name, get their supervisor's name, and ask them on the call to be removed off the list and get a voice or audio confirmation from them that they did that. And as we're speaking, my son is actually getting a spam call on his phone. He just showed it to me. And actually it does say spam likely, or scam likely. I'm sorry, spam the ham. I don't know. Did you answer it? No, he's not answering it. So, any case, take it with a light heart, I guess. That's all I can add to this as well. You're going to get these calls for the rest of your life. Just like you're going to get spam emails for the rest of your life. I mean, I guess that's the price we pay for being in an interconnected world, and the world of social media, and where everybody talks to everybody and everybody's connected. That's part of it. And take it lightly. Don't take it too hard. Don't stress too much. Do what you can. Keep a record if you can. Of course, recording voice messages or calls is always a super great idea. I can tell you I use an app called Call Recorder. You actually have to pay for recorded calls per second or per minute, but it's extremely cheap and it's a very good software. I'm sure there's a lot better ones out there for more pay, or even cheap ones, or even free ones. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know about the technology world anymore, but it is always good to record. Get it from me. The more paper, the cleaner the booty. So make sure you're always nice and clean. Get your stuff recorded. Take it lightly. Don't take it too hard, and don't stress over it too much. Add your number to the Do Not Call registry. And if you're comfortable, ask the caller to remove you off their specific list as well. That's what I would recommend. On top of that, of course, do the stuff that makes sense. Freeze your credit reports, people. Do that too. That's a good idea always. That pretty much brings me to the end of my show. We're talking today on Real Estate Real Talk about spam calls and spam. I keep saying spam. I'm meaning to say scam. It's not spam the ham. Okay. So scam calls, robocalls, telemarketers, solicitors, whoever you are out there, We have declared war on you, and we're going to get you. So at least most of you, 80% of you. So thank you so much for my spill on this one. So this brings me to the end of the show. Of course, if you want to listen to the show again, it is recorded, and you can listen to it on my YouTube channel at a later point in time. Also on wruu.org, just go to archives, go to Wednesday, scroll down to the 12:06 p.m. time slot. That's where you'll see my beautiful face, and all the recorded shows are underneath that. If you have any specific requests on shows that you've missed, just contact me. You can do that just simply by going to my YouTube channel and adding a comment to any of my videos, and that is how I see it the fastest. You can also email me at realestate@juliamspencer.com, and I'll look forward to get your messages. And you were just listening to Real Estate Real Talk. I'm going to be offline here. The next show will be Musical Migrations. Some cool stuff all the way till 3 o'clock. And my name is Julia M. Spencer, and you are listening to WRULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. Have a great Wednesday, everybody. Bye-bye.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.